Hello cherry lovers, today I'm going to be sharing with you how to use the pressure canner to make seasoned spaghetti sauce, so stay tuned. Okay guys, today as I said I'm going to be making some seasoned spaghetti sauce and I'm going to show you how to make that in the pressure canner. But first of all I want to talk about where I've been and I haven't been making any videos. Some of you know that I fell off a ladder last year. And what happened was I really messed up my middle finger and it developed what they call trigger finger, and it just progressively got worse, a lot of pain. So I ended up having to have surgery, and while I had the trigger finger surgery, I decided to go ahead and have carpal tunnel surgery, which is a problem that I had been having for a long time. So I had the surgery and it took a while for my hands to get better, but as you can see, I'm back and my hands are doing a lot better. So where we're going to begin with this spaghetti sauce recipe for the pressure canner is, as you can see, there's a pot of tomatoes here, and guess what guys, all these tomatoes came fresh from our garden. So what we're going to start off is what I call step one. These tomatoes have been washed, very nicely washed, and what you're going to do is chop the tomato. This is what I do. I've watched, let me just say this too, I've watched a ton of videos to make sure that I got the recipe right for the spaghetti sauce in the pressure canner, and there's a lot of videos out there. But let me just say this also, I've made lots and lots of canned spaghetti sauce. So the way I'm showing you actually works very nicely. So again, we're going to get started here. What you want to do is cut your tomato in half. That's what I do, and then I cut in here and core it. This is what you call coring the tomato. And the reason I wanted to show you guys this is because I've seen lots of videos, but nobody ever takes the time to show you exactly how to do it. Now what I'm doing, what you see here, is just cutting out some of the misshapen pieces on the tomato. And again, going in here and taking the core out. You can cut them into fours if they're real big tomatoes, or you can leave them in halves. But there's another piece on there that I don't like, so I'm going to take that off too, put that in the pot and take that out. Now let's do another one. I just cut them in half and then I go in and take that little hard core out, as you can see. Now here's another blemish on there that I don't like, so I'm going to remove the blemish. We're actually going to take all of the skin off, so if you don't want to take the time to take the blemish out, that's perfectly okay, but I do. It's just something that I do. I'm going to cut that out and throw that right into the pot. And you just go in there and take that core out, cut it out. And if they're kind of big, you can also cut that in half. We're going to do a couple more here just to show you. So you just split that in half. I go in there, cut that core out. That's a good one. Go in there and cut that core out. That's a good one. This last one, I'm going to cut in half and take the core out. That's a pretty good size, so we're going to cut that in half. Take the core out, cut that in half. Now we're going to add this to the pot. Now, what I'm going to do, that I've got these pot of tomatoes, my recipe calls for 30 pounds of tomatoes. So I'm going to measure out 30 pounds of tomatoes, and then I'm going to show you what the next step is. Okay, the next step is to weigh my tomatoes. Now I've got these already washed and diced, chopped, and taken the stem out. I've got this little kitchen scale. Let me just show you this so you'll be able to see it. Just a regular kitchen scale. And I put it on the pounds, zero it out, add the bowl, zero it out to make sure it's at zero. It's at zero. And it's on pounds. And just start adding in my tomatoes. And I'll fill this up as far as it'll hold, trying to get to 30 pounds. And I think this one holds about 10 pounds. So we're going to see how far that'll go. That's at about 3 pounds. And we want to, again, make that go up to 30 pounds because this recipe is for 30 pounds of tomatoes. That's 5 pounds. £6. That's 7 pounds. Up a little bit. Okay, we're going to stop that at 8 because that wants to tilt a little bit. Yep. Okay, now right there we have 8 pounds, as you can see. But we're going to move on and we're going to keep going until I get 30 pounds of tomatoes, and then I'm going to tell you what we do next. Okay, guys, the next step here, I've got the tomatoes already chopped up, de-stemmed, took the stems out, and the next step that you want to do is place them in a pot. You may have to do this in batches, like 3 or 4 pots, depending on the size of the pots that you have. But you want to just boil your tomatoes. Very little water in the bottom, guys. Just put maybe a cup. By this time, you may have a lot of juice. I have a lot of juice right now, so I don't actually have to add any water. But let your tomatoes simmer for about 20 minutes, you know, just below a rolling boil. You don't want it to be boiling really fast. But the point is that you're going to loosen the skins up on the tomatoes so that when my next step is to take them over and put them in the blender and put them through a sieve to get all of the seeds and all of the skins off. So this is just to soften up the skins on the tomatoes. So we're going to get that done and then we'll be right back. Okay, guys, now the next step is, but before I show you the next step, I want to tell you something. If Larry will look here, you'll look into this pot. These tomatoes have not boiled, but that was the next step in the process of them. But what we found was that you can actually skip the process of boiling them so the skins can get soft, because once we put them in this blender and run it through a sieve, all of the skins and all of the seeds actually come off. So Larry insisted that I skip that part. He said, that's just too long and that's too much work. But since I've tried this before and it absolutely works, so we're gonna show you the next step. But you can remember, if you want to soften the skins first, you boil them for about 20 minutes in batches. And now the next step is we're going to run it into the blender, and then I'm going to run it through the sieve. Now, I have a sieve right here because I wanted to make sure I show you this. We're going to put that there. Now, the only thing you do with this part is drop your tomatoes into your blender. And you probably got a line just like mine has a line. Be careful. This one has blades, so we want to be careful with that. Oh, and another thing that I wanted to tell you too. The really cool thing is that you can actually use frozen tomatoes. And one thing that I looked up, I thought, now, wouldn't they weigh different? But I actually looked it up, and it said even frozen, weight for weight, they weigh the same, whether they're frozen or whether they're not frozen, because even though they're not frozen, they still have that water in them. And usually if you freeze them, and then the water, a lot of water comes out of them when you unthaw them. But let's get started with the blender here. I've got some tomatoes in there. I'm going to turn it on and just grind it up. Okay, as you can see, it only takes a matter of seconds to blend that. You take that out. This is the part that goes through the sieve. Please don't do like I do. A lot of times I forget to take this out, and it's very sharp. Okay, now the next step is to simply pour your tomato, all of the skins and your seeds and everything right into that sieve. Place that back on there. And what I do is I have a wooden spoon, and I simply lift up the sieve and just push that around. And can you see underneath how that's just coming right through? How quickly that just goes right through. Now I have a bigger sieve. You can use, this one is a smaller one, so it'll take a little bit longer, but you just press that around in there, and that takes all of the seeds, all of the skin stays right inside this sieve. And that is so quick and so simple, so easy to do. And if you're looking here, you can see now there's no liquid, very, very little inside of there, very little coming out. And what I do is, when I'm done with that, I actually take a plastic bag, because if you put this in your garbage bag, it's going to go through and leak. So I just take one of those bags, Kroger bag, Meyer bag, whatever you have, empty that out, and then we'll continue on. So what we're going to do is get us some more tomatoes. I'll show you this step again, very simple. Put you some tomatoes in there. And we're going to turn it up on high, because if you put the blender on high, it actually pulverizes it real quick. Put that on there. Lock that into place, turn that on, and put it on high. Watch how fast that is. Matter of seconds. Takes no time at all. Take that off. Pour your tomato liquid into your bowl. Now you're going to have to do this in batches also, depending on what size bowl you have. And start mashing that around. It just kind of, as you can see, it's all the juice comes right through that sieve. Really simple and really quick. That takes care of all the seeds, all the skin, and anything else that you don't want to go into your spaghetti sauce. Okay, now what I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to finish up the rest of the batch of tomatoes, and then we'll be back with the next step. Okay, guys, real quick, what I wanted to show you here, this is what came out of 30 pounds of tomatoes. I just wanted you to get a picture of the seeds and the skin, and anything that was defective on the outside of the skin is in this bag now. Now, the next thing I want you to see is that we've got our jars in very hot water in the sink. And there's many ways that you can do this, but I got something I want to show you over here. Our next step is going to be for us to, I'm going to show you how to put the foods that I'm actually adding, the bell pepper, mushrooms, and the onions. But I want to read something to you real quick here, because there are many different processes that you do have to sterilize your jars. But listen to this real quick. Is it necessary to sterilize jars before canning? Listen carefully. Jars do not need to be sterilized before canning if they will be filled with food and processed in a boiling water bath, canned for 10 minutes or more. Or if they will be processed in a pressure canner. Filled jars that will be processed in a boiling water bath canner, there's a difference, for less than 10 minutes need to be sterilized first. Boil the jars in hot water for 10 minutes before they're filled. Note that there are no boiling water bath recipes at our altitudes with processing times of 10 minutes or less. So remember, if you're using a pressure canner like I'm using, and you're going to be cooking what's in your pressure canner 10 minutes or more, you do not need to have to sterilize your jars. You can wash them, of course. I recommend washing them and setting them in hot water, but they will be sterilized completely because they will reach a certain temperature that will destroy any kind of bacteria or anything else that might build up in there. So it's just one of the steps that you can step or skip. I didn't know that when I first started canning, but yeah, if you're actually getting your pressure cooker 10 minutes or longer, you don't have to use sterilizing your jars. So now we're gonna move on to our next step. Okay, the next step, I want you to see, I've already put this is quite a bit of tomatoes. I've got them in the pot, and we got this on the eye, and it's turned the temperature on, so it's getting ready to get up to a nice little boil, but we're gonna let that cook for a while. But I didn't give you my ingredients, of course, besides the tomatoes. This is what we have. You're gonna use a 1/4 cup of olive oil and 1 cup of chopped onions. You're gonna use I've got this kind of mix, 5 minced garlic cloves. You're gonna use 2 tablespoons of salt, 1 cup of chopped green pepper, and you can use 1 cup of chopped celery if you choose to, but I'm using bell pepper because I like the flavor of bell pepper. And we have in this container 2 teaspoons of black pepper, 2 tablespoons of oregano flakes, and a 1/4 cup of minced parsley. Also in this cup we have 1/4 cup of brown sugar. So the one thing that I don't have on the counter that I'm going to grab is my garlic and the salt. All right, so what we're going to do, turn the eye on, heat that oil up about 30 seconds, maybe a minute. Let that get hot. And then we're going to add in the vegetables and the mushrooms. Now, we're not going to add in the seasonings yet. We're going to add the seasonings into the pot when we get ready to add them to the pot. Okay. I'm going to take the garlic out here. 5 minced garlics, which is roughly the 5 minced garlics. I looked it up, and it's about a teaspoon of garlic, of minced garlic, for each clove. So we're going to have 5 teaspoons of garlic added in here. Let's get this eye hot. And I wanted to share real quick while our oil is heating up. One of the reasons why I decided to go step by step with every single step of these tomatoes, because I looked up a lot of canning recipes, but I couldn't find any that went step by step. And I had questions like, okay, how long do you let your tomato paste, whether it's paste or soup or sauce, cook after you get it all in the pot and you get the ingredients? And I didn't see anybody. Basically what they said was you let it cook down until it gets thick. I'm like, okay, how long is that? So I'm going to tell you right now that that's going to be anywhere from an hour and a half to maybe 2.5 hours. But I'm actually going to tell you precisely, because my recipes, how long I let them cook depends on how many pounds of tomatoes I've actually used. So we're using 30 pounds of tomatoes. And now I think that's probably, you know what? I am so sorry, guys. I forgot to turn the eye on. Okay, guys, now the oil is heated. This is olive oil that I placed in there. And now what we're going to do is add in our onions. You can hear that sizzle. The grease is nice and hot. And then we're going to add in the green peppers. And then we're going to add in the mushrooms. Now, I don't know if I told you now, but the mushroom is 1 pound of mushroom. 16 ounces is how much I use in this recipe for 30 pounds of tomatoes. So we're going to get that stirred up, mixed up. Now, this is going to take probably about anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes to saute and get nice and soft. So I'm going to get that done, and then I will be right back. Okay, guys, our mushrooms and onions and bell peppers are ready, and they smell so good. What we're going to do here, we're going to take the lid off, and we're going to add this to our tomatoes. And I'm going to sit that over there. And then our spices, we're going to pour right in there. Give that a stir, and then we're going to add in the sugar, and we're going to give that a stir. And get that nice and mixed up. And what has to happen now, this has to come to a complete boil. Let me just say this. Make sure, there's my timer, turn that off. Make sure that you do not forget to stir this frequently. That means that what I do for mine is I set my timer for 5 minutes. And in 5 minutes, I come back and I stir the bottom of this pot. You don't want it to stick. You don't want it to scorch, or you'll ruin the whole batch. Now, this hasn't actually come to a boil yet, so we're not worried about that. I can probably set it for like 8 to 10 minutes before I have to come back. But what you want to do is stop periodically. Like I said, I set my timer for about 5 minutes, and I come and stir the bottom if it's boiling, once I get to the boiling spot. So I'm going to put the lid back on there, and I'm going to set my timer for about 10 minutes because it's going to take that long, at least that long, maybe longer, to come to a complete boil. And then we'll come back and show you the rest of the steps. Okay, guys, real quick here, one thing that I totally forgot to add in, and you'll notice that on the video, is my garlic. I didn't saute my garlic with the onions and the peppers and the mushrooms, but I did go back and pour the garlic into my pan and with a little bit of olive oil, and I sauteed that. And now I'm going to add that into my pot along with some salt. Remember, the salt is to your own liking. And now I'm not going to lie, I don't like a lot of salt. Larry does. So what we do is I'm starting out with a couple teaspoons of salt. That's what I'm going to start out with. And with the 2 teaspoons of salt, I'm going to come back and taste it as it cooks down. We're going to give that a good stir. That pot is still not even warm. So because of the size of this pot, as you can see, it's a huge pot. 30 pounds of tomatoes is a lot. And most people will probably end up doing this in batches if you don't have a pot this size. And that's okay. But we want to get everything stirred up, mixed up together in there. And I'm going to put the lid back on it. And every 5 minutes, I'm going to stir that at the bottom to make sure that it doesn't stick or get scorched. Because if you scorch even a little bit, you'll ruin the whole batch, and you don't want to do that. And that's why I set my timer for 5 minutes, and I come back every 5 minutes for the entire time and actually stir that. And that's great, and that's okay. So you can have the most delicious seasoned spaghetti sauce. So I'll see you shortly. Okay, guys, I want you to follow me into the pot and take a look at that. It's actually cooked down probably a good 2 inches. And it's been cooking now for a good, what time did I turn that on? 9:30, 10:30, 11:30. So about 2 hours and 15 minutes. But as you can see, it's thickening up pretty nicely. Now, one of the things that I wanted to tell you about, the last time I made the spaghetti sauce, and even with the tomato sauce, is that if you would like to thicken your spaghetti sauce, here's 2 of the things that I find that's very, very effective, and that is to slow cook it. Turn it down, let it cook real slow, and that helps to diminish a lot of the liquid out. But one of the fastest ways that I found, and it works really well, I have here some organic tomato paste. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to put about 4 tablespoons, excuse me, into the spaghetti sauce. And normally I use about 3, because I don't usually use this make this big of a batch. But tonight we have, as you know, 30 pounds. So we're going to, I've already actually put in 1, and this will be number 4. So you want to add in some tomato paste, stir that up really good. And from here, this has only got maybe another 15 to 20 minutes, and that spaghetti sauce is actually ready to be canned. So what we're going to do, I'm going to get this nice and stirred up, make sure all of the tomato paste is dissolved, and then I'm going to let it cook for another 15 to 20 minutes. And after it cooks for another 15 to 20 minutes, it should be thick enough then, and I will show you the results of how thick it is at that time, and then I will show you how to prepare it to put it in your jars. Okay, guys, we're almost to the final end of making the spaghetti sauce. And let me just say this too. The one thing, before I started canning, I wanted to can for a very long time. I mean, actually years. But I was afraid, and I said, that's too much work. It's going to be too complicated. It's going to be too hard to do. And the truth is, it's really simple. Okay, it's a lot of work. It takes time. But just imagine, I've got organic vegetables, organic, all my recipes are organic recipes. They come from my garden. I put them on my shelf. They're going to last a while. It's just really, really an amazing way to go. And now I have my own, and I know how to do it. It's very, very, when I say really simple, it is really simple. It just takes a little time and a little work. So now we're at this point, and the point where we're going to have to do on this one is we're going to put, as you can see, I've got 4 quart jars and 2 pint jars. What we have to do for the quart jars, we're going to drop in, this is pure lemon juice. We're going to put 2 tablespoons in the quart jars. Each quart jar requires 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. And then we're going to put, after we finish 2 in each of the quart jars, the pint jars, and I have 2 of the pint jars, requires 1 tablespoon. Also, when you're cooking, this is the first time I've done that, but it's okay. Quart jars require 20 minutes in the pressure canner. No, quart jars require 25 minutes in the pressure canner, and pint size jars require 20 minutes. So we're going to do the full 25 minutes because I do have 4 quart jars. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, just before I add the spaghetti sauce, I want you to see over here. Let me turn this down a bit because we don't want that boiling. We just want that at basically keeping it warm, so we don't need that very high. But we got our lids and we've got our rings for our jars in there. And now we're going to give that a little stir. Make sure I get all of the vegetables in each scoop. And let's see how many is that going to take. And remember, I didn't say this, but I've got my jars sitting here. My jars have already been washed and sterilized. And this is probably gonna take about, if I'm guessing right, about 5, maybe 6, we'll see. And you just put that in to just below the rim, and I'll show you in a minute. It measures an inch, and it's a good thing that these jars have the little ring line on them. That's good enough for there. Let me show you this. But you can see that when I drop this in here, that measures an inch. Your inch is actually, I don't want that to go anywhere, but your inch is right just below that line. That's where your inch is. So that's where we want to put each of the jars. That's how much we want to put into each of the jars, just below that rim. And that handle is in the way. I'm going to turn that just a hair. Okay. And it smells so good, guys. And it's got to a very, very good thickness that I like for my spaghetti sauce. And you just fill those jars up right to that line, which is an inch below. As you can see, you can still see the vegetables in that sauce. You can see the mushrooms. I can see the garlic, and it smells amazing. There's nothing like home canned soups, vegetables, stews, beans, whatever it is that you're making, because you know exactly what's in it. You get to control the amounts of sodium, of sugar, actually of all of the ingredients that you put into your own home canning. Now that'll take a little bit more. As you can see, there's quite a bit more in that pot. I think this recipe called for 8 . I'm sure it wasn't 8 quarts, but it might have been. No, I think it's 8 pints that it called for. Again, I've always had more with every recipe that I've done. It's always been a little more. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to put the lids on. After one thing I did forget, let me grab that real quick. And that is to clean my jars off. You want to clean the rim off because you want it to get a good seal. And if you've got sauce on the rim, it's a possibility that you won't get a very good seal. And we want to make sure it seals. So we're just going to go around and make sure that each jar is nice and clean. That over there. And clean that one off. And this one more time. Okay, we've got our lids. And we've got our rings. So we're just going to stick this on. These on. We need 2 more. Come on. Okay, put that on. And now we're going to finger tighten our rings. Slide that on, finger tighten. It's really simple. You don't tighten it real tight. You just, and that's called finger tighten. When I get a chance, it won't be right now because I'm going to get these in a pot, but I'm going to show you exactly how you can know what a finger tighten is. Really simple. You don't make them tight. just finger tight. And you say, well, why do you have to do it finger tight? If you put them too tight, then you're going to get a seal that won't work. And if you don't get it tight enough, you'll also get a seal that won't work. So now, I'm going to sit these, the pop, I didn't say that part, but I want you to see that we put 3 quarts of water into my pressure canner. And as you can see, it's coming to a boil. The water's simmering more. And you just sit them down in there. Be very careful not to burn yourself. The part of the jar that I'm lifting, of course, is not hot at all. So we're going to get these in here. We have room for 2 more. I'm going to get that in there. And there you go. Now, the next thing is, Larry will give me 1 second. I'm going to come over here and show you how to put this lid on. Now, right here on the top of the lid, there is, let's get them marked right there. You probably can't see that, but there's an arrow right there. And what you want to do, you want to line that arrow up with the arrow on the pot. There's an arrow here, and there's an arrow there. And you simply line that up, and then you turn. You turn, and it turns really easy and real simple. And now what you want to do, give that about 10 minutes. I'm going to set my timer. And what's going to happen is, I'm going to turn this up to 9. Actually, I'm going to put it on high. You want this to pop up, and you want the bubbler to start bubbling. So we're going to put that on. And in about 10 minutes, we'll come back and I'll show you that. This will pop up to let you know that the steam is building up inside, and then the bubbler will be rattling. And I'll come back and I'll show you that. Okay guys, that's the timer going off. And what I'm going to do is turn the eye off right here. And then I'm going to lift this up, and it requires do not slide, but to lift and set that off the eye. Now what's going to happen is I'm going to give that 10 minutes. I'm going to turn my timer on and give it 10 minutes for it to depressurize, and you will notice that this little top button will go down, and then I will remove that and let the steam out. So I'll be back in about 10 minutes. Okay guys, we're getting down to the final processes of this. This air vent has gone down, as you can see, and that means it's safe to take this off. And the only reason that they want you to wait 10 minutes until that drops down is to make sure that you don't get burnt or anything like that, because sometimes we take this off beforehand. But long as that vent valve is down, it's pretty safe. So what we're going to do next is remove the lid. And always remember, when you remove your pressure canner lid, to lift it away from you. I think I'm going to use my glove on this side because that's the side that's warm. Lift it away from you that way, so the steam will go that way. And then I'm going to take this over here and sit this in the sink. Okay, now I just got to find my ring to bring this out. Take a look in there. You can see how it's bubbling and steaming. And you just take your grippers, put it on your jar. And I've got a towel over here on the table. Never put your hot jars on a cold surface. So that's why the towel is there. And I will remove each jar carefully and bring it over here. We've got 4 pints in here, or actually 4 quarts in here, and 2 pints. I did have a little more soup left, so off camera I'm going to put that in the jars, probably another 3 jars anyway, 2 or 3 jars anyhow. And all you do is remove your jars from your pressure canner and let them sit for at least 12 hours. At least 12 hours. You can let them sit for 24 hours if you like, but at least 12 hours to make sure they get a good seal. And the truth is, you'll probably hear it pling, pling, pling. That's the sound I like to make. But shortly after they come out of the pressure canner, they usually start to seal. You'll hear the sound of them sealing. It doesn't take very long. But one thing you want to make sure of, what happens is, if Larry will bring that over here, you can see the top of these lids, they're kind of puffed up. But when that seals, that will go down. And I'm not going to touch it right now because it's very hot. But once that seals, you'll be able to see it. You can hear it. But even after, if you can't hear it, you'll be able to see that it has a good seal on it. So again, let that sit for 12 to 24 hours and make sure all your cans seal. And after 24 hours, here's one thing that try to remember to do. Some people don't, but it's very important to do this. If you want to keep these rings and you want them to continually, you want to be able to continually use them so that they don't rust, after, and please remember to wait at least 12 hours, up to 24. Let them completely cool and then take your rings off. And then you can rewash your rings. Make sure that after you wash them, you completely dry them, because if you leave them wet, from experience, they will rust. But that's the whole idea. Take your rings off, and you can put them on the shelf without any rings on them. They're safe to put into your shelving wherever you put them at, just like that. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. It is a little bit more work to do to actually show you how to do this, but I wanted to show you the step-by-step because I had so many questions when I wanted to learn how to can, and nobody ever goes through the entire process. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and please share it and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Don't forget that. Thank you very much and have a great evening.